The revival of European paganism presents us with an interesting question. What exactly does it mean to be a pagan in modernity? Does being a pagan simply mean that you worship Zeus or Odin? I believe that the answer to what it truly means to be a pagan can be found in the word itself. The term paganism is muddied by the fact that Christians often use it to refer to any religion which isn't Abrahamic, or even anything which they consider to be degenerate or immoral. And while it has been used this way, especially during the Middle Ages, the term began as a Christian classification for the traditional religions of Europe, and it has since come to have that same meaning again. In Latin, paganus means rustic or rural, and was used as a pejorative by Christians to refer to those practicing the religions of the European countryside, similarly to how Christianity was a mocking term used by the Romans to refer to the Jews who followed the cult of Christ. Although pagan was first used in a dismissive sense, perhaps similarly to our use of hillbilly or redneck, I believe the term is actually quite fitting for describing the traditional religions of Europe. Pagan referred to the European countryside, to nature, and to the people and their ancestral traditions, in contrast to the metropolitan centers of Rome, which were run by a degenerate elite and filled with foreigners who practiced Christianity, which gave them a universalist moral identity. Therefore, the term paganism evokes the natural in contrast to the artificial, and therefore is quite fitting for describing the worldview and rituals native to Europe, and particularly their revival. Abrahamic monotheism, especially Christianity and its modern outgrowths such as liberalism, finds the basis for its worldview in morality, in the struggle between good and evil, in the moral soul and the good conscience. European paganism, in contrast, finds its basis in nature. The return of paganism, therefore, represents the return of the natural man, in contrast to the over-civilized, artificial man of the city, as well as the return of the natural and original beliefs of Europe, in contrast to the artificial ideologies and moral systems of modernity, which have strayed from nature. Nature can be a complicated word, but in this context, I use it to refer to the essence of biological life, that which animates things, and more generally, to the nature, the instinctual essence of that life, how it behaves and what it aims at, the nature of nature. Note the double meaning of the word. The essence of the pagan worldview, as I would describe it in broad strokes, is as follows. Reality is not moral on an essential level. Nature is immoral. Nature, like the gods, is violent and cruel while also being beautiful and abundant. Therefore, there can be no moral progress in history. Nature is cyclical, in constant flux and flow, and cannot be constrained by morality. Man can govern himself with virtue, but he can never alter the essentially violent and unconstrained essence of nature and of life. One can heighten and intensify this nature or weaken and constrict it, but one can never transform life into something tame or moral without destroying it. One can only change the degree of its intensity. So as far as there is a goal in history, within civilization and for the individual, it is not to strive to become more moral, but to strive towards the perfected supernature represented by the gods. And the goal of morality, better called virtue in this case, is to discipline one in the pursuit of this supernature, to instill one with the instincts of courage, bravery, grace, beauty, to strengthen all the virtues which nature rewards, and which direct the individual towards the higher, towards being more beautiful, more powerful, more divine, towards being heroic. In other words, towards being like the gods. The purpose of pagan virtue is not to make the soul moral. Virtue is, for the character of an individual, what bodybuilding and training for sports or war is for the body. Virtue is a discipline meant to mold one into something higher, to direct and shape the raw energies of nature, and to intensify them through their discipline and direction. The essence of being a pagan in modernity is not found in belief or even ritual, but in embodying the spirit of the pagan worldview. It is in part an aesthetic endeavor. It is not a moral endeavor or one which rests on the proclamation of certain beliefs or opinions. It is a way of being and acting which one can be initiated into by immersing themselves in the texts and symbols of antiquity, as well as by spending time in nature. It was Nietzsche who first led me to an essentially pagan worldview, but I soon saw, as Nietzsche himself points out, that this worldview is most succinctly and beautifully expressed in the texts and symbols of ancient pagan cultures. In them, I found the highest expression of the spirit which I sought after. I was drawn to all forms of European paganism, even the Christian paganism of Arthurian literature, in part due to my exposure to them in youth. But I was particularly drawn to the gods of my Roman ancestors. Those who wish to be pagan should investigate the gods of their ancestors, or those of closest approximation, and from there, engaging practically with pagan practices is quite easy. You can easily purchase a miniature statue or carving of many European gods online. I have one of Juno and Romulus and Remus. You can offer sacrifices of oil, incense, milk, and so on, just as your ancestors did, and you may be surprised at what you get in return. Or you can simply meditate on these ancient images and let them fill you with power. It's also fairly easy to engage with pagan rituals. You can celebrate Midsummer and Yule and dance the Maypole. I was lucky enough to grow up around these rituals, which are still celebrated. I think rituals are extremely important for imbuing our society again with a vital spirit. What kind of rituals do we practice? Contemplating the crucifixion of the innocents? Or do we go out into nature, dance, and revel in our wildness? This is why I advocate for even Christians to return to a pagan spirit and to practice the Christianity of Arthurian literature. Our rituals influence us profoundly, and in a time when our collective guilt drives us to turn away from life, to reject life, it is vital that we practice rituals which restore life and vitality to us. And the spirit of paganism rests upon the worship and strengthening of this vital force. And it is this vital spirit which calls to you from the texts and symbols of the ancients. Even if you feel at first that you are LARPing, you know in your body that there is something profound expressed in the pagan symbols of the ancients, something that you cannot articulate. Follow these symbols, and perhaps one day you will feel, suddenly, abruptly, that you are possessed by the spirit of a god. Or perhaps in your dreams, or while walking in the woods, a god will appear to you and summon you to a great task. To open yourself up to ancient spirits, to reject the idea that you should be guilty for your own existence, or guilty for your own success, to aim uncompromisingly for the highest, and to let the vital spirit explode forth from your body like a god from another world. This is what it means to be a pagan in modernity.
To gain access to the ARC's exclusive podcast, as well as a private Telegram community where we discuss the revival of the pagan spirit, vitalism, and more, check the links in the description. You can also download the art from this channel for free on Ko-fi, or donate. Thank you for your support. It makes this channel possible.